This presentation is supported by our regional water supplier, Tarrant Regional Water District. TRWD maintains 4 area lakes and pipelines needed to provide surface water to local water treatment plants so they can clean it to meet drinking water standards for our communities. They also work with many cities in Tarrant County, such as Fort Worth, Arlington, and Mansfield, to provide water conservation programs for the community. Conservation is an important water supply strategy to help meet the needs of a growing population. There are currently 2.3 million people in Tarrant County, and this is expected to double over the next 50 years. This is why TRWD supports many programs that help save water through outdoor watering and gardening education. At SaveTarrantWater.com, you can sign up for free weekly watering advice custom to your location. If you are a resident of Tarrant County, you can sign up for a free sprinkler system checkup where a licensed irrigator comes to your home and provides a comprehensive evaluation of your system with recommendations to reduce water waste. There is also an event calendar where you can find important information about future classes and workshops. TRWD also partners with organizations like Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Service and the Tarrant County Master Gardeners to provide educational programs just like this one. Be sure to check out SaveTarrantWater.com and sign up for their free services.
All right, companion planting. I do love this topic. So I like starting many of my presentations with the definition. What is a companion? Well, the word companion originated in Latin, and it literally means one who eats bread with another. And while companion has several meanings, including a person or an animal you enjoy spending time with, for our purposes tonight, companion also means one of a pair of things that go together, that complement each other. If you think about people in your life who are companions, think about the things that you enjoy doing with them. This is my granddaughter, and she and I absolutely love being outside. We are, as I say, dirt princesses together. And I feel the same way about flowers that she does in this photo. So she is a true companion because she complements me and we kind of go together. And why do plants need companions? Well, just as we benefit from supportive, encouraging, and sharing companions, so do plants. And following is a list of many of the ways companion planting can improve your garden. Some of the benefits will include some plants are nutrient providers. Some are natural pesticide plants. Some companion plants provide buffer zones if you set them up for shelter and protection. And I'll talk about that more in a little bit. Some are pollinator attractors. Some plants provide biological control of pests, such as tomato hornworms. Some plants are maskers. They provide scent camouflaging. Some plants are trappers, grabbing those pesky stink bugs and Florida leaf-footed bugs, etc. Some plants improve soil structure. Some are weed reducers through a process called allelopathy. And some companions are just generalists. They're like the best neighbors on the block. Oops, sorry. Here we go. I'll get it. All right. These are my must plant companions. And what I'm going to tell you tonight is going to be information based on both anecdotal and scientific research. When I was growing up, my grandmother told me, for example, that I should always plant marigolds with my tomatoes because her grandmother, her mother, and so on, going back for a long time, had always done that. She didn't have scientific research. The glorious thing now is that we actually have scientific research that these plants work. And there's ongoing research about others. And so while I can tell you that I plant all of these plants in my garden in Southwest Fort Worth every year, and they, for my garden, have shown great improvements, I'm glad now that I can also point you to scientific references in books. So here we go. We've got basil, borage, alliums, dill, marigolds, millet, mustards, alyssum, sweet alyssum, nasturtiums, sunflowers, and zinnias. These are the top ones for me. And we're going to spend time going through each one and talking about just really how they are good neighbors and good companions. So basil almost everybody knows basil as a culinary plant. It's wonderful, as you know, in cooking, but it repels asparagus beetles. So as my asparagus bed comes to life in February, it's still very open. And my goal is always to try to get some basil plants in that bed in March so that hopefully that will help with the asparagus beetle issue. Basil repels spider mites, carrot flies, thrips. It's said to deter cabbage worms and cabbage loopers. Well, I don't grow cabbage, I grow kale and collards. And so I do get cabbage worms and cabbage loopers on those brassicas. Basil benefits when grown with chamomile, chives, cilantro, garlic, and other herbs. It grows very well with tomatoes. And this is just an example of a really pretty basil called cinnamon basil that has this glorious maroon cluster of leaves at the very top when it gets as tall as it's going to get. And I think it's as pretty as the little flowers that come up later. Borage. Borage is the fun plant to grow because it has until the flowers come, it's not necessarily a beautiful plant, and it's a big plant. Notice at the bottom of the slide, I say it's a very large plant. It can get 2 feet in diameter and maybe a little broader, but it does a lot of great things in your garden. It repels tomato worms, cabbage worms. You will get more bees and more tiny wasps than you could ever imagine on this plant. It blooms early before a lot of your annual flowers are blooming. It grows well with strawberries, cabbage, zucchini, pumpkins, basil, tomatoes, peppers. It's said to improve the taste of your tomatoes. It makes the sort of a living mulch under your tomato plants. You just need to know it's getting bigger and bigger, and you walk out and think every day, my gosh, how big is it going to get? It's big. It sends up its first flower stalk from the center of the rosette plant, and you get these glorious blue and purple flowers that taste like cucumbers. They're great in salads, and they're stunning in a cocktail. But you don't just get a few. They've counted them, and most borage plants grow produce over 900 flowers in a season, which is pretty amazing. And they self-seed prolifically. The plant in the bottom self-seeded and came up in a bed across the garden from where the original borage plants were in 2023. The one at the bottom is 2024, and it was in a tomato bed. Alliums, every single one of them, chives, onions of all sorts, from bunching onions, walking onions, scallions, garlic, you name it, shallots. They repel aphids. They repel Japanese beetles. There's a book I reference at the end in the reference section called "Roses Love Garlic." People love to plant chives in with their roses to repel those Japanese beetles to keep them from eating the leaves. Alliums will grow well with brassicas, carrots, tomatoes, potatoes, peppers, eggplants, strawberries, roses, but they don't play nicely with beans. And just to prove it, even though I've read this for years and I've never done it before, this year I did plant my long beans in a bed that had some both garlic and onion chives in it, and it really slowed the growth on the long beans, because normally they just take off and look like they grow, half a foot or foot every day. And they've been very slow this year. So I confirmed for myself not to plant them together with beans again. Just a picture of onion and shallot starts that I order from Dixondale Farms in South Texas every year. They perform beautifully, and they look like this, but they turn into the onion that was on the previous slide. So dill. Dill also repels asparagus beetles. So when I'm sticking basil in my asparagus bed early on, I'm also putting dill in there. And in order to be able to do that before the nurseries actually have dill and basil available, I started indoors in February, early February. So at least I've got small plants to get out there. Dill, as you know, is beloved by the swallowtail butterfly caterpillar, but it also attracts lacewings, ladybugs, hoverflies, predatory wasps to the garden. It grows well with asparagus, cucumbers, broccoli, cilantro. You don't want to plant it with carrots because it inhibits the growth. And you don't want to plant it with tomatoes because, unfortunately, it can attract tomato hornworms. Who knew? So I never put dill in my tomato or pepper beds for that matter. And you will get a list of a lot of these pluses and minuses in that PDF document that will be sent to you. Marigolds. While all marigolds are beautiful, French marigolds are the ones that really repel nematodes. They have a toxin in their roots that will destroy the nematodes in the soil. And so the recommendation is to actually plant a French marigold next to every one of your tomato plants, not just one or two in the bed, but one right by the tomato itself. And if you've never had a nematode problem, you are blessed. I have had nematode problems from the time, I guess, from 2019 on in different beds. And so I've had to solarize different ones. And you're not able to garden in that bed for several months. So I have learned to stick a French marigold next to every tomato. They deter some predatory insects due to their strong scent. And again, they grow well with tomatoes, potatoes, cucumbers, and squash. And really, marigolds grow well with just about anything. And they add a bright pop of color, especially now as we're getting into the true hot time. This is a marigold called Old Flame. The seed is from Baker Creek. It's just one that I think is pretty stunning as it opens up. And so it's just here for interest. Millet is an unusual one, probably to some of you. This is ornamental millet growing in the garden, and it looks somewhat like corn until you notice the darker leaves. It sends up tall inflorescences or flower stalks that the Florida leaf-footed bugs and their nymphs cannot get enough of. And by the end of summer, the grasshoppers will chew the leaves too, and it'll be covered in stink bugs. And I don't care because it's pulling those insects away from my tomatoes and peppers and cucumbers. So it's a true trap crop, a trap plant. Mustard is not everybody's favorite, but a lot of us really like it. And we enjoy mustard when the leaves are small, nice and spicy in a wrap or in a salad. But as the mustard continues to grow and get bigger and tougher, I don't remove it. I let it continue to grow. And if you'll notice in the photo, there are little holes starting to appear in the leaves, some from slug damage, but by the end of the season, the mustard plants will be covered in little holes from flea beetles. And so I don't actually plant it in the beds. I plant it in grow bags and pots and move it around the garden. If you grow sweet potatoes, you know that flea beetles are attracted to their leaves. And so I'm always making sure I have several pots of mustard growing near my sweet potato beds. Sweet alyssum smells delightful, as many of you know. It's a low-growing plant. It creates a habitat for beneficials. Small insects will overnight in the plants, and parasitoid wasp and hoverflies absolutely love it. So it's one of the earliest things that you can find in the nurseries, and get out in the garden, and it will be blooming. I also grow it from seed, but it takes it longer to bloom, of course, than transplants. Nasturtiums are known as being a peppery tasting plant. The leaves and the flowers are lovely in salads. They're that spicy little bite. But as companion plants, they repel cucumber beetles, woolly aphids, whiteflies, squash bugs, and they grow well with brassicas, radishes, tomatoes, and cucumbers. So in this image, I have it growing in a vertical planter, in a green stalk planter. But you can grow it everywhere. This time of year for me, though, it does really tend to fade, and so I have flush cut most of my nasturtiums at this point in time, just because they look pretty rough. But it's a plant I'll always grow, and it also makes kind of a nice living mulch when it starts to cover the ground. Sunflowers. These sunflowers are over 10 feet tall, and they grow that big every year. They attract aphids, they attract pollinators. So they're going to bring the pollinators into the garden for you, which will then be a blessing to the vegetables. They're going to pull aphids away from your treasured crops. They can provide some shade for some of your lower growing plants. They are called trap croppers because, again, Florida leaf-footed bugs and stink bugs, and like I said, aphids will be drawn to the sunflowers rather than getting to your other vegetables. However, they are allelopathic, which means that their roots put out a sort of a toxin that prevents things from growing around them, or at least not growing as well as they could. Kind of think about an oak tree where the grass doesn't grow under. Oak trees are allelopathic. And so for that reason, these sunflowers are not planted in a bed or don't are not allowed to come up in a bed, in a garden bed or a flower bed. They're allowed to grow next to a bed. And every year my sunflowers self-seed madly. I stopped counting at 900 seedlings this last year. They start coming up some years in December, most years in January. And because they're so close to the ground, they tend not to freeze. So I have many, many, many. And you'll notice these were coming up in a bed that had kale and collards in it because I had grown sunflowers next to this bed the previous year. So that's just the one drawback of having the sunflowers that the birds adore, and the birds will scatter the seeds all over for you. Zinnias. Zinnias attract pollinators. Zinnias are a generalist, one of those good neighbors that everybody likes. They grow well with ornamentals, they grow well with vegetables. I don't know anything that the zinnias don't grow well with. They're just really enjoyable. And of course, at this time of year, they're one of our most brilliant, vibrant annual flowers in the garden. And this is a new one to me this year. It's called Mazurkia from Botanical Interest. Is where I got the seeds. And again, it's just one of those, it's really fun to watch open because it's got those furled little petals. The pollinators adore it too. So that was the first list of companion plants that I really enjoy. Here is the next list. So calendula, carrots, chamomile, comfrey, cosmos, peas, radishes, and sage. I know when we plant our carrots, we're just thinking about harvesting the carrots, and that's great. And that's the main reason I plant them, is because I want to be able to eat them. But they also, if planted in pots and grow bags, can draw aphids away from other plants in the garden if you choose. They can attract cabbage worms. They can attract the Colorado potato beetle. So I have been known to plant carrots in pots near my potato bags, and hopefully it's made a difference. I've not seen potato beetles here yet, knock on lots of wood. They work especially well when they're interplanted with other companion insects other companion plants to attract insect pests. Calendula is one of my favorite of all companion plants and herbs because the petals are edible. You can throw them in a salad. They are found in just numerous skincare products. The calendula itself, the extract, the essential oil, they deter aphids and they grow well with all the brassicas. Calendula tends to self-seed in my garden, especially if our winter is not severe. So this year I had a lot of volunteers, and that's just fine with me. Some people call it pot marigold. It's just an old herb that is cheerful and comes in many different varieties and colors. And I'm sure most of you know cosmos. It is just a happy, happy plant that seems to dance in the garden. It can attract aphids, and it grows well with brassicas and doesn't deter. It doesn't, it's another generalist. It's just a good neighbor. It doesn't hurt anything. Comfrey. Comfrey is an old herb. It used to be called, it's one of its common names was boneset or knit bone. It was once believed that it helped heal broken bones, but we now know that it's toxic if taken internally. So um, don't do that. But it has these delightful little flowers that hang upside down. Bees love to burrow in there. It also blooms early in the season when borage does. Like, that are pretty rough. But what comfrey does for us is improve soil structure. It has an incredibly deep taproot. This is one of the few planted in native soil here, other than yarrow. And it said that once you try to cut it back, it's still going to be coming for you. Taproot is so deep. I grew this from seed 4 years ago, back in a bed on the side of the yard, and it's just been very happy. But the way that it's a great companion plant is you can use the comfrey leaves to make a liquid plant tea. Leaves are plucked as they're fading. They go into a 5-gallon bucket. You just keep piling them in there. You don't even have to add water. You put the top on it, just set it away somewhere in the shade in the garden and let it sit for at least 4 weeks. And when you take the top off, it smells like something. I can't even describe how bad it smells. It's bad. However, there's so many nutrients in there that you will be able to take the liquid because it turns into this liquid mush and dilute it. And look online if you are interested in doing this for the ratios. It's just a really nutrient rich compost tea. But you've been warned, don't get it on your clothes or your hands. Chamomile. Chamomile is a great companion plant also because it has antifungal properties. You can actually make it, take the leaves and flowers and create a liquid plant food for any fungal issues you're having on your plant. Again, you'd have a concentrate and you dilute it and you'd spray the leaves of anything with fungal issues. But it attracts pollinators, including ladybugs and wasps. And it is just so delightful and cheery. It self-seeds all over my garden, 20, 30 feet away from the original plant. So just know that. Um, I don't mind though. I just enjoy going out and seeing the little flowers. And it benefits anything growing around it. So it's a win-win. Peas in the legume family. These are actually shelling peas in this picture, but the flowers look very similar on sugar snap peas. And the magical thing to me about legumes, it's not magical, I know, but it seems like it is they capture nitrogen in the air. The nitrogen is stored in their roots and it becomes bioavailable in the soil for whatever crop is next planted in that bed. So it's kind of like, think of it if you buy an existing home and you walk in and the previous owners have left you flowers and cookies and the house smells great and there's not much work that's needed. It's a good neighbor for the next residents of the bed or the row, the garden, wherever you've had the legumes planted, it's going to benefit whoever comes next. And the same is true for anything in the legume family: red clover, white clover, field peas, shelling peas, beans. They all improve soil fertility. Radishes can actually be a good companion plant, especially if they're planted as a cover crop. They can attract flea beetles. So I have been known to leave radishes past their due date and just let the leaves keep growing, and I'll pretty soon find that they're starting to develop little holes all in them from flea beetles. And as the roots get longer, they can help with loosening soil structure. But if you really want to improve soil structure, daikon radishes can be planted as a cover crop in the fall, and they get much larger, and they too will help loosen soil structure. So they again are a kind of companion for what comes next in that bed. Sage, this is variegated sage, but The same is true for common sage, common culinary sage. Sage can repel cabbage moths, cabbage loopers, black fly beetles, carrot rust flies because of their scent. It grows really well with brassicas and strawberries. And there's our common sage. So what does companion planting look like? It looks like whatever you want it to look like. This was a bed that just was so happy. It started the year, this was last year in this bed. It actually started in the fall of 2022 when I planted kale and collard greens and Swiss chard in this bed. And this particular picture is in either May or June of 2023 because the kale and collards had been removed. The chard was still growing in the back. And in the bed, I just decided to have a smorgasbord of flowers to benefit the Swiss chard that was growing in the back and the okra that I had then planted in the bed too. And so you'll notice French marigolds. There are some African marigolds, cosmos. There's a Mexican sunflower. Trying to remember. It was just a very, very happy bed. Your companion planting doesn't have to look like this. I know this looks a little over. Just know that companion planting isn't monoculture. It's just a glorious mix of three. So this was a cucumber tunnel.
There you go.
So, all right. Sorry about that, guys.
That
Internet.
happens. That's
I know. It's called real life. All right. This, I don't know if you heard any of this, but I was talking about, this was a cucumber tunnel last year and with cucumbers planted on both sides. And there's okra on the outside of these two beds. But this is interplanted with cosmos, marigold, zinnias. Blue spice basil is an ornamental basil that the pollinators love and also that stink bugs love. So I planted it for the first time in 2022 and it self-seeds. I've not had to plant it again, but it pulls the stink bugs off of whatever's planted in these two beds. Sunflowers are planted at the very end of the photo. They're not in a bed. They are just growing adjacent to it to pull those pesky pests away. And this is the other end of the cucumber tunnel, just so you can see. Those sunflowers are not in a bed. They just were self-seeded down here by by these two perennial beds. Again, the sunflower great cut flowers attract pollinators and best way. And I apologize. It keeps telling me my internet connection is unstable. I don't know if there's an issue. All right. Colored bell peppers. This is a companion planted bed, and you can see it's got 6 bell peppers in there with onion chives, French marigolds, some basil, sweet alyssum on the end. And in the grow bags back behind, you'll see there's a grow bag with nasturtiums, and there's artichokes with sweet alyssum, and there are some marigolds in there. I know you can't see them, but there's also peppers back there too with basil. And so and there's some mustard back there. I just mix it all up. And this was a fantastic, last year was a great year for peppers. So is this year. Never know. I like vertical planters. I've got 4 of these. I got my first one during 2020. They are a great way to companion plant and just to try all different kinds of things out. And you can see the list of all the different plants that are in here. I even had a leftover potato plant. So I stuck it in there and got 2 potatoes out of the green stalk, but my actual Irish potatoes are planted adjacent to this vertical planter in the oversized potato grow bags. And they benefited then from the plants that were in the green stalk pulling away pests. So this is just a shot of the garden in 2023 in late February, possibly early March. I'd have to look back. But the reason I know this bed right in the front with the kale and the Swiss chard, that's the one you saw earlier that was the bed that was totally covered in everything under the sun with all the flowers, the okra, the Swiss chard still growing. But so you can quickly transition when the pests move into my kale in usually at late February, early March, if it's getting warm like it did last year. The kale comes out and it gets replanted. I did have garlic growing next to the kale to try to draw some pest away. And other than that, if you look across the garden, you'll see more potato bags, green stalks, just the asparagus coming to life. And this is how the asparagus looks in the background when I'm sticking herbs in there, the dill and the basil. They can still get a lot of sun early in the season. Just a different kind of steel bed and planted with Mexico midget tomatoes, which by the way are a great cherry tomato, onion chives, some straw flowers, French marigold, right next to that tomato plant. So it works, or it's worked for me. This is a tomato bed early April of last year. So the tomatoes were started inside in January. And then the basil and onion chives that I put in this bed were actually purchased at a nursery because everything I had planted from seed in the herb department was still pretty small, and I wanted to get some bigger plants out. And this eventually filled up with French marigolds, cosmos, zinnias, and more basil. It was totally packed. And those little lines you're seeing is water. This is one of my watering grids that works really well. You can companion plant in a planter, a pot, anything. This was actually a pot that I took to a presentation I was giving on companion planting last year. That's a micro tom tomato. So it's a determinate tomato that only gets about 6 inches tall and grows very small tomatoes, and they all pretty much produce about the same time. It's just a fun little early tomato bite. And it's planted, of course, with alliums. And in this case, that's actually an African marigold just because my French marigolds weren't ready yet. And then time. 2022, where I had my great cucumber bed in 2023, I was growing okra and black-eyed peas the year before, and I interplanted with zinnias. There are some sunflowers actually growing down the walkway that year. So again, trying to draw those pests out. And that was the first year I planted that blue spice basil. That's great. And I had some cosmos in here too. And then this was this year in March. We were still having some freezing nights. I'd moved the green stalks down to the patio. And so that's why the frost cloths are down at the bottom of the beds. But again, everything is a mixture. I had collards and kale planted down here with Swiss chard, stuck in some marigolds that I grabbed from the nursery. And then there's rosemary and peppermint and thyme and actually lavender growing in this bed back here. So again, just a mixture. The more herbs you grow where you're sitting, if you're sitting on your patio, they say a lot of a lot of pests do not like the scent of herbs. So we grow lots of herbs. They're companions for us too. But you can see the list of all the things that are planted in the beds and in the green stalks. So how do you get started with companion planting? You want to research, because as I've told you, not everything makes a good neighbor, a good companion. Plan out what you're going to do. Plant early indoors if you can, so the companions will be ready to plant out similar times. Keep records and celebrate your successes. This is what my grow station looks like. It's in our garage, which is insulated and has not gotten below 40 degrees in the 6 years we've lived here, even during 2021. So that's great. I grow on heat mats and with adjustable lights and just get things started early. And that way I can ensure that I've got all kinds of different herbs to go out with things like my dino kale and collards and everything else that I want to get out early. All right, so these are some of the resources that I really wrote the first book, the Plant Partners book, and she also wrote a book called Attracting Love. She spoke at the International Master Gardener. One of our master gardeners asked me if I'd read her book, and I hadn't, so I grabbed it. And then there are a couple of others. Nina McKeon has a great book, and it's full of charts of what to grow together and what not. And then I mentioned Roses Love Garlic and Carrots Love Tomatoes. Those are two books by a longtime gardener in Oklahoma, Louise Riote. She has a lot of anecdotal information in her books. She doesn't have the scientific knowledge that Jessica Walliser has in hers. And these are the two handouts you'll get with that PDF that Nancy Curl's going to send you. One is by a vlogger in Wales. Her name is Liz Zorab, and her channel is By Their Farm. And this is she put this out just a couple of weeks ago about what doesn't grow well together. And so, and then the other one on the right is from Old World Garden Farms, and you can sign up for their newsletter, and they'll send you something daily if you like. And they talk about what grows well with things and what to avoid planting with it. So it's a handy one pager. Both of them are interesting, and I keep a copy now in my garden shed. And these are my favorite YouTube and channels and websites. And like I said, Old World Garden Farms, Epic Gardening. Epic Gardening has a great YouTube channel. Rural Sprout, Garden Know-How, Liz Zorab. Hugh Richards, Gardens in Wales, has written some fantastic books. Jock in the Garden and Charles Dowding and Growing in the Garden. So there's so many other resources out there, but these are the ones that I really rely on. And then this is a list of my favorite seed sources. And you will get this when you receive the link to the video, but you're welcome to take a screenshot if you'd like to. Why do I like these seed companies? Because they have seed varieties that I have grown in my garden. They have varieties of plants, that I can't find, not just at the big box nurseries, but just at all the local nurseries. And it's interesting to try something new. So guys, let me stop sharing.
You're still fading in and out every now and then, Sheryl. Are you
And
there?
sorry about the technical difficulties.
I know. We don't have any control over that.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a wonderful presentation. So inclusive of everything. It was great.
Are you there?
Yep. Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Sheryl?
Are you there, Dick? I can't hear you. You're breaking up.
Uh, I am here.
Okay. And yes, I'm looking at the questions. Do you want me to
Yeah.
answer them?
Let's start. Yeah. Do you allow peas to decompose in the bed to get the benefit from them?
Yes, I do. So what I do, I flush cut them. So I will leave the roots in the ground, and I will kind of chop and drop the rest of the plants and just lay them back down in the bed. And I just push them aside, and then I will plant into them. I have to push them aside. I always have a problem with pill bugs, roly-polies, um, getting into the bed with, new seedlings. And so I have to push the peas to the side as they're decomposing.
Would it work if you just tilled them into the soil?
Yes, but I don't believe in that. So,
Oh, okay.
so I'm not a tiller. I'm a piler. I don't like to till because of these are raised beds, and so I just I'm layering new compost and all kinds of stuff
Okay.
here. So yes, it would work great if you tilled them in. That'd be fine.
All right. What type of irrigation do you have in your steel beds?
So those garden grids are from a company called Garden in Minutes, and they are uh, grids. You can order on their website. You can order 1x2s, you can order 8x8s, and they're priced, accordingly. And the neat thing about them is, so that's all the like the drip tape, the pipe. I can't think of the right word, the PVC pipe, and there are holes on two sides of each length. And so I order 1 foot smaller all the way around than the size of the bed because you can rotate the outside one so that you're actually getting water going outside of the grid too, if that makes any sense. And you can connect them all together. I just haven't, my garden is so spread out that I'd have a lot of hoses running across. So I just use quick connects with my hoses, and everything's on a timer and I run it to them. And so that's what I've got. Garden in a minute grids.
Sounds good.
Yep.
There's a question about the seed plant suppliers, but I want to remind everyone that you will get a copy of this presentation. And of course, that list is on the presentation, isn't it? Isn't that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. It's on the presentation. Absolutely. It's the last slide.
Yep. Okay. Now, do they discuss when to start the seeds and all that type of thing too?
All right. So the next question about supplier and plans for seed starting stations. Is that what you're? So no, those do not talk about, on the seed packets they do.
Right.
But so my seed starting stations, the shelving and the lights, one of them I bought a really expensive, well, two of them I bought. They were from Gardener's Supply. And so they come with the shelving and the adjustable lights. And they're not cheap. I will tell you this. However, mine are they're working for, even though I showed in the slide that I'm starting things January through March, I'm still actually using it into May, some of them, because I'll start well, to the end of April anyway. I'll start my okra indoors too, just because I've discovered if I plant my okra seed direct in the garden, the pill bugs eat the seeds. So I start them indoors and have hardy little plants to put outside. So Gardener Supply is where I get those. But also you can get, I had one wavy light that I got from Amazon. I get my heat mats from Amazon. So you can look around. You don't have to get the really, really expensive things. You can get a really good set of shelving, and make sure you get lights, though, fluorescent lights. The LED lights are fluorescent lights, I guess, that you can adjust. That's the most important thing, being able to get the light down when the seeds are germinating, and then being able to raise the lights up as your seedlings get taller. You don't want the lights way up because your seedlings will get very leggy when they're just starting out.
Okay.
And okay, go ahead.
What's your growth zone?
We are now in 8B. We used to be 8A, although I really haven't seen a difference, but it's just.
I think we're less than that some of these winters.
I know, exactly. But they changed this to 8B. And this has been a very unusual year for us. We had a wet spring and it was cooler overall. And then we had, last week was like the end of spring again, or just the very, very beginning of summer. So that was a nice respite. We can get through August, I hope.
Well, we hope so.
Yes.
Susan says she's got peanuts coming up in her garden and she's allergic to peanuts. Will they create a problem if they decompose in her beds?
Yeah, she needs to get someone to get them out of there. I mean, I bet squirrels planted them for her.
Probably.
Because I had them do that in Arkansas, and and I have a grandson who's allergic to peanuts and all tree nuts. So it's a big problem. So Susan, I hope you've got someone who will get rid of them for you. And I wouldn't compost them. That's something I would put in your yard cart.
Okay. Mary Thomas wants to know what you recommend for squash bugs.
I have a bug vacuum that I use. But I don't have squash bugs because, Mary, I don't grow squash because 3 years ago, I had beautiful pumpkins. I was growing miniature pumpkins for my grandchildren. Gorgeous one night. I was talking to them, came out the next morning, and the vines had, were all wilted. And I have squash vine borer. And everything I have read and people I have asked agree on this. Once you have the squash vine borer in your yard, you're going to have it in your soil. So I don't grow squash, but I work at a community garden. I don't work. I volunteer at a community garden, and they have squash bugs. And the best recommendation for squash bugs that I've come across as far as companion planting is to grow Hubbard squash. And it's going to be a sacrificial squash. I believe Hubbard squash is a winter squash. And, it's the big kind of gray looking squash. So you want to grow it somewhere in your garden, on your farm, wherever, to draw the squash bugs away from your pumpkins and other things that you don't want them to destroy. Good question.
Yep, it is.
Yeah, but you can get a bug vacuum. I got mine from Amazon, and I keep soapy water in a can, and I take it to the community garden and actually vacuum up the squash bugs, and then drop them off into the soapy water where they drown.
Okay,
That's,
it looks like someone else has a question. Jennifer, um, I will allow you to talk. You want to see if you can unmute yourself? You can unmute and we should be able to hear you. Well, she hasn't. Yeah,
I
there
was
you, there
wondering,
you are. Go ahead,
sorry,
Jennifer.
this is new to me. I was hoping for some information about grasshoppers. I have a big problem with grasshoppers.
yes, ma'am. So there is nothing that I know of that with companion planting that will help with grasshoppers. They appear here every summer, and they just devour specific things, don't they? There's a product you can buy called Nolo. I don't I have not used it, but I have been told it really works. It's hard to find when the grasshoppers get here, and so the recommendation I've been told is to try to get it earlier in the spring, and it's really Nolo. And I'm not sure how it's applied. I don't know if it's I think it's a concentrate that you spray, but I could be wrong. But if you'll look up Nolo and see if that will help you, because they are a hideous problem. You're right.
Thank you very much. I will
Yes, ma'am.
try.
Okay, good.
All right. Amy, you had your hand up? Do you have a question? Amy Trevino?
No, no,
No?
I didn't. I must
Okay.
have
Well,
accidentally
well,
bumped it.
it was an Amy Trevino.
Ah, wrong Amy.
Yeah,
Sorry.
sorry.
Goodbye.
Well, bye, Amy. Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, here's one about what was on top of the seed starts.
Oh,
I put vermiculite. So, so many seeds tell you to plant them a fourth of an inch deep. And I am really not good at that. I tend to probably plant them too deep. And I've learned that if I get my seed starting mix damp and sprinkle my seeds on, and then tap, kind of pat them down, I can sprinkle a little bit of vermiculite on top, and they sprout beautifully. So that's what that was. Another good question.
okay. And Patsy Miller says she has a question.
All right.
Let's see if I can get to her here. Here she is. Okay, Patsy, you should be able to.
Yeah, yeah. Can you hear
Okay.
me?
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Well, you have given me an idea, and I don't know if Sue Kelly or Gloria Handy or Yolanda are on listening, but in our Greenworks greenhouse,
Mm-hmm.
we've constantly had a problem with aphids and white flies.
Mm-hmm.
And so I am wondering, could we put pots or grow pots of these companion plants around the plants we're trying to grow for the plant sale or whatever.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we could try that because, obviously we don't want to use, pesticide. And if we do have to resort to like a bomb, the ceilings are so high, and that's part of the problem of why we have the pests. So we don't like to do that. So anyway, that's the idea you've given me, and I thought that we could do that.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Absolutely. There are a lot of the things that would work with aphids and pulling them away, and like putting the pots in the corner are as far away from your, the vegetable starts and things. Yep.
Well, we don't have that many vegetable starts. They're mainly other. Does it work well with flowers and herbs? Well, we have herbs.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Well, we'll be consulting you. Thank you.
All right. Ooh, and I see that Juanita posted that Nolo's not available because their factory burned down. Oh,
yeah,
how sad.
I saw that too. So we have no answer for them, do we?
Not really. And every year they absolutely strip the tops of my Rosa Sharons. I don't know what it is that and I look at them and think, oh, I'm just gonna, and then suddenly when we get into about September, little leaves start coming back out again. So I've just learned to live with it, unfortunately.
All right. Well, I don't see any more questions.
Okay.
If there are no more questions, we want to thank everybody for joining us this evening.